This is what I call this morning teacher talk. Actually, we call it Teacher Talk Morning Edition. This is going to be episode number 1. I'm going to try to do this on a regular basis. Don't know if it's going to work or not, but every morning on the way to school, just try to do like maybe a 20-minute live stream. And the hope is that we'll be answering some questions, and the hope is that you go in there, put some comments down, anything about teaching, and I can give you some of my long years of wisdom that I have. So my name's Gabriel. I've been teaching 20 years in Southern California. And once again, if you pop on, just put a comment down. I'd be more than happy to answer any questions you have about teaching. So I'm going to just start though until a comment pops in there. One of the common questions people have regarding teaching. No, I gotta keep talking. One of the common questions people about teaching is, what do you do if students don't want to do the work? Oh, now first of all, so I'm a mentor to kind of many different teachers. A lot of times these mentors or mentees will ask me questions. This one that comes up quite often is, what if a student doesn't want to do the work? And I'll be honest about it. Teaching 20-something years, and I still have a handful of students that no matter what I do, just don't do the work. They don't want to do the work. And so I'll have an honest conversation with them. I kind of get down to the level and I'll ask them. I used to ask them, the question was, what grade do you want in this class? But every time I asked that question, almost always they would say A or B. And I knew they weren't telling the truth because they were doing absolutely nothing in the class. So over the years, I've changed my question, and it goes like this. What is the lowest grade you can get in this class and be happy? And that's the question I ask now. And that usually gives me an honest answer. And they'll think about it, and the ones that do care will normally say, probably a C. And so, all right, gives me an understanding of where they want to be at. Now, some of them will be super honest and answer, I don't care. I'm okay with an F. And I said, okay, well, are your parents okay with that? And if their answer is yes, then I know what I'm working with. I'm working with a student that is not motivated at all, and they don't have any parent support. And I tell them this, I said, well, here's the deal. If you really don't care about the grade, and your parents don't care about the grade, I'm not going to be on your case about it, I'm here to help. If you ever change your mind and you want to get a better grade, let me know. But as long as you're not causing any problems in the class, I'll kind of leave you alone. And then I'll usually let that go a couple of days. And if they're still not doing any work, then I'll come back to them again and I'll say, hey, last time we talked, you said you'd be okay with the F class. Do you still feel that way? And if their answer is yeah, I say, okay, well, no problem at all. I totally understand. But if you're okay, I'm going to call home just to touch base with your parents, just to cover my butt, because I don't want your parents to be upset at me if I'm not making you do any work in this class. So is that okay with you? And at this point in time, you usually get 1 or 2 responses. The response is, oh yeah, go ahead and give them a call. Then once again, verifying there's no parent support. And I'll call home, and usually there's no parent support, and there's not much I can do with that student. But if I say that comment and they reply back, oh, please don't call home, I don't want to get in trouble, then I at least know I have something to work with. And then my response back will be this. I say, okay, well, here's the deal. If you really worry about me calling home, how about I give you a couple more days? If you start doing the work now, you can still get a good grade. As long as I see you doing the work, I won't call home. But if you continue to don't do the work, then I got to call home. Does that sound fair? And they'll answer yes or no. And then I'll wait a few more days to see if they actually start doing the work. If they actually start doing the work, then we're on the right track. So the process I have, if students aren't doing the work, the process I have is I have a real honest conversation. What's the lowest grade you get and be happy? They give me an answer, and then from there it kind of guides how I proceed from there. Either I will, call home at that point, or I'll give like another chance before I call home. But that is usually what I do. But even with all of that, I still, honestly, in each class, a class of 30 kids, I probably still have I would say probably about 3 kids on a regular basis that just refuse to do the work. And And so you just got to take it with a grain of salt and understand, what you work with. Another thing I do is I make sure that if in fact is the kid or is it my class, I'll look at the grades in other classes. If they have F's all across the board, then I know it's not necessarily me. But if I notice they get good grades in some other classes, but my class are feeling no effort at all, then that also guides me in what I do, because then I know they are motivated in school, just not necessarily my class. And so I might have to tweak some things or have another honest conversation with them and myself of what I can do differently. So that's how I normally handle students that don't want to do any work in the class. So once again, if you're just joining us, this is Teacher Talk Morning Edition. I'm going to try to do this on a regular basis. No promises, but every morning or so I'm going to try for maybe 20 minutes to do a live stream. And hopefully ideas that people pop on, ask some questions about teaching in general, and as well as what it's like to be a teacher, or how to deal with different students, or what I do, or what they can do differently in a class. Any comments are welcome at all. I'd be more than happy to help. So with that said, here's another question that I get quite often, and it goes like this: how do you handle disruptive behavior in the class? My first 7 years of teaching, it was awful for me. It really, really was awful. And it took me about that's a long time, by the way, 7 years to finally get my footing, 7 years to finally feel comfortable in class. But for most teachers, that is the hardest thing they have to do with in class, is dealing with disruptive behavior. And so there's different things I do for that. But the best advice I can give regarding that is, first of all, know what your expectations are. I mean, you got to be really clear about what is acceptable in your class and not acceptable. Because so many times, if you're not clear about that, you'll let things go just because you don't feel like dealing with it. And I know that because it's exhausting dealing with behavior in class. And so you got to know what you want first of all. And once you really identify how you want your class to be, as far as when it's okay for students to talk, when it's not okay, how can they talk? Do you want them to talk together? Do you not want them to talk? If you're talking, what should they be doing? Are you okay if they ask questions, or do you want them to raise it? You got to know all that stuff. And once you really have an understanding of what you're really looking for in the class, then you got to make sure the kids adhere to that. You got to make sure you create those boundaries, and you got to make sure that the kids' behavior fall within those boundaries. And as soon as they don't, you have to call them out on it. Not in a mean way, not in a way of being rude or disrespectful, but you just got to call them out. Like, this is the boundary, this is my expectations, this is how you're crossing those boundaries, or this is how you're not meeting those expectations. So that's the first thing. You know exactly what you're looking for, and then as soon as a kid crosses the boundary, you call them out. Because if you let kids cross that boundary, you're going to find yourself, whatever you want in the class is just going to quickly fall apart. So then the question is, how do you call kids out on that? And it kind of goes to once again, I learned this from a teacher real early on. He had a saying. It was called fair, firm, and consistent. Fair, firm, and consistent. Fair means you kind of treat all students the same. So if there's a student you really like or a student you really don't like, you still treat them the same regarding the rules and expectations. So that's the fair part. Firm is, once again, knowing those boundaries and sticking with those boundaries and just making sure students adhere to those expectations. And consistent is, you got to make sure that you are the same in and day out. Kids' lives, many of these kids' lives are full of inconsistency. And if you can be that one anchor, that one consistent thing, even if you're worried about the kids not liking you, being upset because of your rules, the fact that you're consistent creates stability. And that's what you're looking for in the classroom. So fair, firm, and consistent. And so when a student is disruptive, you got to call them out on it. Depending upon the situation, you could do it in public for the students if you're trying to quickly move on. But normally what I'll do is I'll come up to them. So let's say they're working on a worksheet or something of that sort, independent work. I'll come up to them and I'll just have a quick conversation, say regarding their behavior, and I'll explain what was going on, and I explain why we can't have that in the classroom. But then I will always follow with it with saying, does that sound fair to you? Does that sound fair to you? One or two answers. Either the answer is yes, and then the conversation over. And the answer is no. The answer, well, why does that not sound fair to you? And then give them a chance to explain. So it's just being, cool, calm, consistent. That's the best way to handle disruptive behavior in the classroom. So once again, we're going to call this Teacher Talk Morning Edition. I'm driving on my way to work right now. I'm going to try to do this on a regular basis around 7 o'clock Pacific time. If you have any questions or comments, just leave them there. If you have any questions about maybe how to deal with something in the classroom, just feel free to leave a comment. I'd be more than happy to answer any kind of questions you have regarding teaching. I offer a course on classroom management, so that's always something you can follow me for, and I can get you a copy of that course. I also do mentoring and coaching for teachers, new teachers, any teachers that need help in the classroom. So I also have resources for that as well. But regarding the mentoring and teaching, here's another question that a lot of times my mentees will ask, and that is regarding lesson planning. The thing is, and I always start with this. I always start with the lesson planning. You've got to have the end in mind. You got to have the end in mind. And with that, anytime I do my lesson planning, the first thing I do is create my tests. What do I want students to know? That's how I start. So you start with the end in mind. Whatever you want students to know, you start with that and create the test. And so I teach history. Once again, been doing this 20 years, so I already luckily I have all my tests already planned out. But the tests, for me, like history, you might want to test on knowledge, you might want to test on some sort of skills, or some other skill that you want them to develop. But once you have that in mind, you got the test, and then you go back and plan according to that test. Now, you're not teaching to the test. I mean, you're not trying to teach them just so they can pass the test. You're going to give them information, but all the information should lead up to what ultimately is going to be on the test. And so I normally have units, for me, I kind of chunk them in 3-week units. I call it a unit, a 3-week plan. And then I'll lay it out, the test being at the end of the 3 units or 3 weeks. And I put in there, I think to myself, what would be a good flow? Because when I first started teaching, I would piecemeal things together. I would take lessons from here, and put them together just to try different things. But if you have the end in mind, you can find a certain flow to lesson planning. You know where you're going, you can develop the lessons so that they move you towards that direction. So for me, for example, history, got my test. And I'll normally start off with some videos. I call them Edpuzzle videos. That gives them some information. And then I usually will have an assignment. Maybe that I do some more personal information. Then I'll usually have an assignment that works with the information. So it kind of gives them information. Then we'll have an assignment that works with the information. And I kind of repeat that cycle over and over. But the biggest thing I found out regarding lesson planning, as far as making your life easy and simple and to streamline things, is find that flow, find that routine. So for me, I have some standard things I always go to. I have my Edpuzzles and I have my notes. And so those are standard things. And so I plan out my weeks. I put the Edpuzzles in, put my notes in. And so those are kind of a repeating cycle. And so the next unit, whatever it is, I still got Edpuzzles, still got notes. And so regardless of what the material is, the same process, the same sequence happens over and over again. And then what I do is I start sprinkling in different assignments that are specific regarding that topic. Like, for example, when we do the issue of the Civil War, I have a video regarding the slave codes that we call it. And so that'll be in there. We sprinkled that in there. Regarding the Industrial Revolution, I just taught the Industrial Revolution. I have our notes, have our posts, but then I put an assignment there what's called Build Your Own City, or Urbanization Game it's called. And so once again, you have your core things that you go back to, so you don't have to recreate everything all the time, but then you can sprinkle in new activities and new assignments. So with that said, we'll conclude this, what are we going to call this here? Teacher Talk Morning Edition. But one thing I'll be trying to do this, I'll try to do this on a routine basis every morning. maybe around 7 o'clock Pacific time. And once again, it's a good opportunity for teachers to jump on, ask any kind of questions they may have. But with that said, have a wonderful day, and I'll talk to you later.